Hi, Marketing Girlies. Welcome to the 200th episode of Marketing Girly. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm saying that, but we have hit the 200 episode mark. What a wild journey building this podcast has been. And so today's episode, we're going to do something a little bit different, and I'm going to share my biggest lessons that I've learned from 200 episodes. I'm not going to share guest lessons like career advice I've learned from the 200 guests. I'm more so going to share my personal lessons on building a podcast and building a company over 200 episodes. This 200 episode mark is also aligning very closely with the 5-year anniversary of Sky Society, our 5th birthday, which is so crazy. So I wanted to give you girls a little bit of insight in what my journey has been building Sky Society, building Marketing Girly. I'm not going to go super in depth into my founding story, but if you are somebody that is maybe interested in starting a podcast one day, interested in starting your own business, then I want to share some advice that I've learned and how I've made it to the 5-year mark and to the 200 episode of Marketing Girly. Again, it's so crazy. If you guys aren't familiar with how this podcast got created, I founded Sky Society about 5 years ago with a mission to help women enter the marketing workforce and build careers that they love. As part of that journey, I also started this podcast alongside it. And this podcast was meant to and has supported what we're doing at Sky Society. So most of my time is really focused on building Sky Society, specifically our accelerator, which is our digital marketing boot camp for women. That accelerator is what started all of Sky Society, that idea that I had back in college, that while I loved my college education, I felt like there was a really big gap between what I was learning in the classroom and what I actually needed to succeed in my career. And I knew I wasn't the only one feeling that way. I knew girls that were trying to get into the marketing industry were really struggling and oftentimes having very long, grueling job hunts, feeling like they have to settle for a job that doesn't excite them. And I wanted to create a program that actually worked. And the whole philosophy around the accelerator curriculum is experience-based learning. So learning by actually doing real marketing campaigns, so you graduate with actual KPIs and you are actually more qualified for the jobs that you want. And then also baking in real life career skills that are super important that you're not taught in college, like negotiating your salary, building a marketing portfolio, having mentors. So many amazing things go into that curriculum. So that is how Sky Society got started. In tandem with that, when I started the company, I was super, super young. I was a fresh little baby out of college, and I had finished college early, so I was extra young. And I wanted to be able to be well informed in creating this curriculum. And I also wanted to start to build authority for myself because why should you believe some 20-something-year-old girl out of college that has just started her career? Like, why should we trust her? And this podcast is a way for me to start to build that knowledge, build that trust. I already had a lot of knowledge because I had had my marketing job for about 2 years at the time of starting Sky Society, and I was working full time. So that is kind of the origin story of that podcast, and also selfishly, I really wanted more female mentors in my life. I am really close with my dad. I love my dad. He gives me amazing advice. I still call him all the time for advice with my company, but there are challenges that I faced uniquely as a woman that he didn't understand and things that I was really curious about, specifically within marketing, but I had nobody to turn to. And so I saw this podcast as me doing coffee chats with women that I was curious to learn about their careers and a way for anybody to listen in and tap into those coffee chats. One thing that's really unique about Marketing Girly is we are not a marketing podcast. Marketing Girly is a career podcast. So I don't interview quote unquote marketing experts about expert marketing tips. I interview marketers about their career. And there is nobody else doing a podcast like that. The other thing that's super unique about Marketing Girly is I don't interview just CEOs and CMOs. Most podcasts are all about getting people with the highest title. They want to bring on the CEO, they want to bring on a CMO. Usually, when they're bringing on a founder, that founder is trying to sell something to their audience, right? They do like coaching or courses or something like that. Instead, I like to say it's at Marketing Girly, we interview the women doing the work. We interview the girls that are closer to you in your career, right? We bring in a diverse range of titles from managers to directors to some of those C-level execs, but it's quite diverse in the ranges of titles that you'll see come on this podcast. And that's super intentional because I think that it's so much more relatable sometimes to hear a story from somebody that's only a couple years away from you. And so that feels like advice that's more attainable and achievable. And that is kind of how we pick our guest on Marketing Girly. We also try to bring in women from a lot of different industries. So you'll see women and a lot of the industries too that me personally, I'm super interested in. I know my audience, I know the marketing girlies are also interested in. So you'll see a lot of women in beauty, in fashion, in sports. We still bring in people from tech, from CPG. I really try to bring in lots of different industries, different companies, different titles. So the guest range is super diverse. And again, it's a career podcast. So definitely our guests share some amazing advice for marketing too, but the intent is to be a career podcast. And we're the only ones that are doing a career podcast for marketing. And specifically, again, we also focus on women, which is amazing. So that is kind of why this podcast exists. That is why the structure is the way that it is. I've also started to do more solo episodes because I've gotten some feedback from girls that you really love the very actionable, short 20-minute episodes. So I'm starting to bring more of those in, which I'm seeing you girls really like, which has been amazing. So we kind of alternate between guests and then also having the solo episodes that are meant to be more actionable. If you are listening to this podcast on Spotify, something that you may have noticed is we started to add video to the episodes, which has been really exciting. If you listen on Apple Podcast, you won't see our video. I'm not sure if that's even possible, how we can do that. But if you listen on Spotify, you will see the video for the episode. Same, we also put all the videos on YouTube. A couple months ago, I started to record the episodes in person, and it has been so much fun getting to meet my guests in person. And also the content that comes from it is so good. Right now at Sky Society, we do not have a social media manager. So a lot of those podcast clips that you see are made by me or somebody else in the Sky Society team, but we don't have anybody dedicated 100% to social. But we have somebody joining our team very soon that will be helping with that. So you'll see a lot more of those clips on social media. It has been really cool. I basically will fly over to LA for a couple days. I will batch record episodes in LA. We rent out an amazing studio and we will record the episodes in that studio. Doing that at first was quite an investment because this podcast, transparently, is not a revenue generating asset for Sky Society. We definitely occasionally do a sponsorship here and there, but it's nothing significant. The purpose of this podcast, which is actually one of the lessons that I want to share, was never to be a podcaster. Like my goal is not to be a podcaster. I don't identify as a podcaster. I identify as a founder that has a podcast. This podcast, again, is really just for my personal curiosity and learning from incredible women and really bringing that need that I had for myself of having access to more female mentors in my life to lots and lots of people. So, like I said earlier, that you can really tap into those coffee chats where it might be hard to get a coffee chat with a lot of these women on LinkedIn because their DMs are flooded. But you can listen to Marketing Girly and you get to learn from these incredible, incredible, successful marketers. And there's lots of them that you can come on. So that was the intention of the podcast. I've not pursued it in that sense. And never say never, maybe one day we will, but that truly has been the goal. So going and spending, thousands of dollars to record in an in-person studio and to actually produce the episodes was definitely really scary. But I went to LA and I did my very first time recording. I think I did that back in June, and it was a total eye-opener of how much more I felt like I connected with the guest versus just meeting on Zoom. Actually being there in person is so much different. I'm a big believer in this. I'm a big believer in not having fully remote teams and actually having that in-person communication and collaboration. I think that's so, so, so powerful. I noticed that with my guest. And again, the content looks so good. If you listen to any of my guest episodes now going forward, they are in person. And yeah, I've been flying to LA. I'm hoping to go to New York and record with some guests in New York. I'm based in Austin. There definitely are marketing girlies in Austin. I've recorded with some. I've recorded with marketing girlies at Skinny Dipped and Waterboy, and I definitely want to do more in Austin. However, the fact of the matter is that a lot of those big companies live in are based in LA or New York, and so it does require me to travel. So the cost of recording those episodes isn't just the cost of the studio, it's also the cost of all of that travel. So that is how we got to here to 200 episodes. It took me a while before I even did my first in-person episode before the podcast was solely on Zoom. I'm recording this episode on Zoom in my office at home as well. If you are wanting to start a podcast, it is truly the easiest thing ever. Starting is not hard. All you need is Zoom. Okay, we all know Zoom, and a microphone. My microphone, I think, costs like $150 on Amazon. You want to get a good one. This isn't even the best one, but that's truly all you need. There is free editing software. For a long time, I edited my podcast on Audacity. It's completely free. You can even use like iMovie on your Mac. That is all you need. Oh, and then a subscription to host your podcast. So we use Buzzsprout. It's about, I don't know, $12 a month. All right, you can start a podcast for pretty much no money. And getting guests is also free. I would just reach out to people on LinkedIn. I was super annoying in everybody's LinkedIn DMs, cold outreaching everybody. It truly is not hard to start. The hardest part is being consistent. Lessons learned from 200 episodes. It's easy to start. The hardest part is being consistent. This podcast now has 200 episodes. If I was actually consistent and posted an episode every single week since I started this podcast, we would be at well over 200 episodes. But the fact of the matter is, I was not consistent because it was super, super hard for me to balance as a solo founder. At the start, I couldn't afford to have any employees. So it was just me trying to build the business, trying to do the accelerator, trying to also have this podcast. And it was so hard because the podcast didn't feel like it was growing. Felt like I was putting a lot of effort into these episodes. At the beginning, I had to do a lot of outreach because I didn't have an established brand yet. So people weren't as open to coming on a podcast that they maybe haven't heard of. So I'd have to do much more outreach. It was difficult to get the guests at the beginning, and I just wasn't super consistent with it. What really changed was when I took the leap and made my first hire at Sky Society. And her name's Andrea. She's been with Sky Society for over 3 years now. She's amazing. Shout out to her because she's a huge reason why these episodes have all come out and been super consistent over the last couple years. But she was super key and supporting me with the outreach and guest communication and editing of the podcast. And that allowed me to be so much more consistent. And one thing that I really had to let go of to be more consistent with the podcast episodes was focusing on consistency over quality. When I first started recording my episodes, I would want to edit out every single filler word. I would want to be super meticulous with how I edited it, super meticulous with the questions that I asked. Over time, I got less hyper focused on those small things. And it would be a lot easier for me to produce an episode because I was no longer being a perfectionist with the audio and with what I said. This then let me build a lot of momentum. Doing the podcast week over week allowed us to grow our audience more, allowed us to build trust, momentum. And to me, that is truly the key of growing anything. If I had to say what has allowed me to be successful with Sky Society, it was truly consistency. Same with this podcast. There have been moments where I really wanted to quit and I really considered quitting a lot. Like, just to be super, super honest, even with Sky Society, growing it has been so hard. I truly believe there are a million reasons why I shouldn't be here, why Sky Society shouldn't be here, why this podcast, I probably should have quit it a while ago. Truly feel like I hit every single obstacle, and the journey has been so, so hard, as I know it is for lots of founders. And I have definitely considered quitting and wanting to quit a lot because of how hard it was. But I was crazy enough to not. I just kept doing it. And looking back now at the success of Sky Society, looking back now at the success of this podcast is truly because I just kept showing up. because I kept making episodes week after week, because I kept building and growing and doing whatever I could for Sky Society. And one day you wake up and you realize the momentum that you build for yourself and things to start to click and the snowball starts to get larger and roll faster. And that is my biggest advice for anybody who's starting a business or a podcast is it is supposed to be hard. I'm not an influencer. It's also we're not doing my list in order. But I'm not an influencer. Okay. I started a podcast and I'm not an influencer, nor have I aspired to be an influencer. That's just not something for me personally that I aspire to be. But I still have a podcast and I still have a business. And I feel like in today's day and age, you feel like you need to be an influencer or have some type of social audience to be successful. You don't. I feel like I'm a great example of that. And that definitely made the journey hard, right? Because I didn't just have an audience of thousands of people that I could tap into and say, hey, I have a podcast now, you should listen to it. I had to build that audience from the ground up, and it was very, very difficult. But if I can do it, you can do it. And if you have an idea for a podcast or you have an idea for a business, you should absolutely do it because it definitely will be the hardest thing ever, but it is also the most rewarding thing ever. The challenges I faced growing Sky Society and growing Marketing Girly have made me into a person that I am so proud to be. It has grown my confidence immensely. It has been a journey of self-discovery. I have truly personally gotten so much out of the challenges that growing this business and podcast have that I faced. And I challenge anyone listening that if you have an idea to just do it. There's never a perfect time. You don't have to have an audience. It's going to be so hard, but just know that it's supposed to be hard. I feel like I was comparing myself a lot to people on social media that were sharing their journeys about being a founder, and it looked easy for them and it was so hard for me. But that is really not the reality. And you also just don't know everything going on behind someone in social media. So that is my advice for you. Just keep being consistent. The momentum that you build is invaluable. I always think about that, even for the accelerator. Now, 5 years into the accelerator, of course, it was a lot harder to have students in the program in the first year when we had no results to show, no student case studies, nothing. But I kept doing it and we kept growing. And now 5 years in, we have so many testimonials. We have so many hired girlies. We have so many reviews. And that is all momentum that we built over time. So that is my advice for you. Um, Another really big lesson that I've learned throughout the podcast, and this is one that is not a new lesson, is that you don't get what you don't ask for. I have had the craziest, coolest, most incredible guest on this podcast, and 90% of it stemmed from a LinkedIn DM, like a cold LinkedIn DM. I am not, again, I live in Austin, and again, there's great things in Austin, but I am not like a marketing girly that works at a huge company that has a bunch of connections. I've had to grow my network and build my connections from scratch, from the ground up. And even now, because my goal is to interview people across different companies, different industries, different job titles, it requires me to still cold reach out to people all the time. And I am always so surprised at who says yes. We're actually doing something similar right now at Sky Society, where for our accelerator, we're trying to get software and university partnerships. I am so surprised at the different softwares that are huge brands that want to partner with us and that are excited to partner with us. And I even feel like I wasn't super sure who would say yes. And just seeing um, Katie on our team, also shout out to Katie, who's doing an incredible job reaching out to these partners and seeing their interest and excitement. Again, you do not get what you don't ask for. And same with the podcast. I mean, if you want guests, you just have to ask. And you're probably going to ask 20 people and maybe one will respond. And that one person might fall through or ghost you eventually. And you just keep reaching out to more and more people. Don't take the no's personally. I have faced so much rejection in this journey of building Sky Society. I have definitely cried over a lot of that rejection. I get rejected all the time for lots of things because we are always trying new things at Sky Society, trying new risks. We built out the Marketing Girly Mentor Program. We are building out university partnerships. We are building out software partnerships. I have this podcast. There are so many things that we get told no for, but on the flip side, there are also yeses. I always like to say, like, I truly feel like the thick skin that I've built through dealing and handling with all of these rejections has like truly made me the founder that I am today and the person that I am today. And it has allowed me to build so much confidence. So don't take the no's personally. Don't take rejection personally. It's truly part of the process. And again, building a business, building a podcast is hard. It's supposed to be hard, and that's okay. You will absolutely get through it. All right, let's go into my next lesson learned, which is that authenticity isn't scripted. So, something that might surprise you is that I don't write the questions for the guests that I interview on this podcast in advance. I actually freestyle every single episode. I absolutely do my research on the guest. So, I do come prepared. I do my research on them. I ask them what they want to talk about. We chat before we record. Again, I'm stalking them on LinkedIn, looking at their jobs. I understand who they are and I go in with a general idea of what I want to ask them. However, I do not pre-prepare questions. I used to pre-prepare questions in the past, but I felt like the conversations weren't as authentic. And again, this is a career advice podcast, and I wanted it to be focused more on storytelling. And I feel like to tell an authentic story, you just have to come from an angle of pure curiosity. And that is how I try to approach all of my episodes, is just genuinely being curious about the guest, which is super easy. Okay. That's what I feel like I think is so fun about having a podcast. But I do not pre prepare a list of questions. I even have guests that will ask me for a list of questions and I'll give them like a rough outline, but I do not like to give them a free list of questions because then they prepare their answers and their answers sound less authentic. So hot take, do not write questions for my episodes. I think the conversations are much more authentic when I just show up. Now, this took a while. I didn't just do this right out of the gate. I had to get much more comfortable doing the podcast and speaking and talking to guests. Again, we're 200 episodes in. It's definitely a skill that I've built. And something that I've also built alongside that is being a lot more mindful of my filler words. I definitely still say, like, I live in California. I feel like sometimes I have the stereotypical filler words, or I grew up in California, but I am so much better than I was at the beginning. If you scroll back to the very beginning of my first episodes, I am very embarrassed at how I spoke and the filler words that I was using. I have really honed in that skill and practiced it, and really just being aware and listening to some of those early episodes has allowed me to be a lot more mindful. And I feel like it's made me a much better and more confident speaker. All right. Going into one of my last lessons I want to share with you, and then I also want to go into a little bit of the future of what I see for Marketing Girly and Sky Society. So, my last lesson, and this is something that I've really come into and really just have been thinking a lot, especially now that Sky Society has hit this 5-year mark, is that the more you do something, the more you do something, the better you get at it. And I know that's like the most basic takeaway. However, as somebody who was super young and super ambitious, like I have always been incredibly ambitious my entire life. I feel like I didn't understand why certain opportunities didn't come to me. I feel like I was really hard on myself for not knowing certain lessons. Looking back at myself 5 years ago, I am immensely more knowledgeable, more competent, more wise. I am so much different than the Natalie that started Sky Society. And I feel like so much different in the most amazing ways. But I didn't realize that when I started. I didn't know what I didn't know. I think is a good way to put it. I didn't know what I didn't know, and I didn't know the life lessons that were ahead of me. And I think sometimes I call those like the unteachable lessons. But if you are young right now, your greatest asset is how naive you are. I really think that's what allowed me to build Sky Society is I just naively believe that it would work out, even though there is truly every odd against me. And the more you do something, the better you get at it. You will wake up 5 years later, like me, and be like, oh my gosh, how do I have this knowledge and this skill? And it's truly from going back to my earlier point of being consistent and showing up and building that momentum for yourself. If you are consistent with your goals, they will happen, they will come true. And it might not be at all in the way that you thought. Like the path from having the goal to reaching it, that journey is probably going to look super, super different. So definitely let go of the vision of exactly how you see yourself hitting that goal because it's probably going to look really different than you imagine. But you will get there if you're consistent and you will learn so much. I have a lot of very unique skill around building a business and around building this podcast. And again, it wasn't from school that I taught. It truly was from just doing it so many times. The more you do something, the better you get at it. Just start. just do it, just be consistent. I, in a very cheesy way, feel like all of my dreams have come true. And I know that's like the cheesiest thing to say, but I really wanted to build a business and I really wanted to help people and I really wanted to be happy. And I feel like I really accomplished those things. And I have the biggest goals for Sky Society and I have the biggest goals for this podcast. And I definitely, like many other founders, suffer from incurable ambition where I just want to do so much. However, I also consistently remind myself to take a step back and be really grateful for where I am today, where Sky Society is today. Truly feel so lucky to have the best job ever. Like I, again, not to be cheesy, but I really feel like I get to change people's lives. And specifically with the accelerator, it is just the best feeling, and I absolutely love it. It motivates me, it pushes me. Um, Again, I feel like I need to do I've done episodes on my journey, on my founder journey before, but I feel so grateful for being here. So if you've been in the Sky Society Marketing Girly community for a while, thank you so much for being a part of it. If you are new, welcome. We're so excited to have you. I've got big dreams and big plans for Sky Society. We are a bootstrapped company, so our growth has been both slow and fast at the same time, but we are growing our team slowly. And every time I bring on a new hire, we get to explore and achieve new things at the company. So we've got lots of fun stuff ahead for Sky Society, ahead for our community, ahead for the accelerator, and ahead for the Marketing Girly podcast. I want to wrap up this episode because I feel like I went a lot longer than I thought I would sharing my 200 episode recap and thoughts, but I hope this is helpful. I hope you feel inspired and capable to go after your own dreams and to start that podcast or to start that business. You absolutely can do it. And I'm excited for you and for you on that journey. And I hope you stick along for the next 5 years of Sky Society, the next 200 episodes of Marketing Girlies. Because, like I said, we've got so much fun stuff. So, again, thank you, Marketing Girlies, for supporting Sky Society. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Thank you for staying to the end of this episode. It truly means the world, and I'm so excited for what's next.